Sorry, it's raining. Let's get started. The first reading comes from Isaiah, and the reading is Isaiah warning a pre-exile people. It's definitely a warning of God's punishment, of God's anger and God's justice, really. It's very much Old Testament language done in a parable of a vineyard. And we're going to jump a lot more into the parable of a vineyard with Jesus in the gospel. But really, the first reading highlights the idea that we've been following along in the readings in the past weeks of God's mercy and God's justice, and especially what our human idea of fairness looks like and what God's idea of fairness actually is. With that, we have to understand, especially through the second reading from Paul this weekend, is what trust in God looks like and how we can have trust in God, especially in a world filled with things that can make us anxious. But this very first reading with Isaiah, it's a warning to the people, especially before the exile, that by turning away from God, there is consequences with that. And what we're going to find out with Jesus, especially through the whole Paschal mystery, but as he gets into his parable of the vineyard, what the consequences of life with him can be like if we listen to the prophets and if we follow what his teachings are as his disciples. What are those consequences versus when we turn away from God? What are the consequences that follow? Don't be anxious, which is a lot easier said than done, obviously. But what is Paul trying to say to the Philippians? He's trying to say, if we can have a trust and a foundation in God, then we can overcome the feelings of anxiety. Not to say that we're ever going to never be anxious, right? Because we are people with emotions and feelings, and things happen in our day-to-day lives that can absolutely be surprising to us and catch us off guard. And one of our common reactions to it is to feel anxious. But the way that we can overcome, the way that we can push through and persevere through that anxiety is by having a trust and a foundation in God, right? And how Paul talks about that is through a routine and a habit of prayer. Not to say, at least I wouldn't say, that we're just trying to pray away our anxiety. I think of the stories of the saints. They didn't pray for their suffering to be lifted and alleviated. They prayed that God would enter into their heart and into their lives so that they could power through their suffering, and hopefully their lives could be a light and a lamp for all of us who get to experience now their stories. So whenever you're feeling anxious, whenever you're feeling down and trapped and crippled by anxiety, know that you can have a trust and a foundation in God, that it is through him that he can pull you out of that. Let's end off with no better words than the letter to the Philippians. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Keep on doing what you have learned and received and heard and seen in me. Then the God of peace will be with you. So now we've made it to the Gospels, and now we're back with Jesus in another parable, and he's taking the same story that Isaiah was talking about in the first reading, and now he's adding to it. He's talking about a vineyard now, but he's also adding in an allegory of the prophets and the Son of God coming, and they're being killed, and the people that are at the vineyard are getting rid of them. And I think that is very interesting that at the tail end of the gospel, we see Jesus, like he's done with many of the parables, look out into the crowd and ask them what would they do in this scenario. And the people say that they would avenge the prophets. They would avenge the heir of the people that killed him so that they could steal his inheritance. And I think that as we keep reading, of course, for us, getting that bird's eye view, we can see the irony that these people that are saying no, the parable that has these people that are killing everybody, they're the bad ones. We want to be the good people, and yet they're the same ones that turn around and they're the ones walking away, right? They're the ones that have cast out the prophets. They're the ones that are in the story. I think with this gospel, just like so many other passages with Jesus, he's holding up a mirror to the people. And I think especially for our day and age today, whenever we read the gospels and any of the readings, any of scripture, I think that a mirror is being held up to us. So sit and pray with that. And think about when Jesus is holding up a mirror for you, what do you see? Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out all the wonderful things that's happening here at St. Edward's Church. Our fall parish festival is coming up. And so if I don't see you Sunday, I'll see you soon.